The gunshot that echoed through the general store made Helena Anderson's empty stomach clench even tighter, but she kept her eyes fixed on the shelves of canned goods before her, pretending she belonged among the well-dressed shoppers of Nogales, Arizona territory. It was November 1881, and she had been walking for 3 days straight with nothing but creek water and 2 handfuls of wild berries to sustain her. The rough cotton dress she wore hung loose on her frame, evidence of weeks of sparse meals even before she had fled her uncle's ranch in desperation. Outside, someone was celebrating or fighting. She could not tell which anymore, but the sound made her dizzy. She reached out to steady herself against the wooden counter, her vision swimming as Mrs. Henderson, the shopkeeper's wife, gave her a suspicious look from behind the register. Helena knew what she saw. A young woman of 22 with dirt under her fingernails and dust coating her brown hair, clearly without the means to purchase anything in this establishment. The shame of it burned in her cheeks, but not as much as the gnawing emptiness in her belly. "Can I help you with something, miss?" Mrs. Henderson's voice carried an edge that suggested Helena should either buy something or leave. Helena opened her mouth to respond, to make some excuse about waiting for someone, but the words tangled on her tongue. The floor seemed to tilt beneath her feet, and the shelves of goods began to blur together in a wash of colors. She heard her own voice from very far away, saying something that might have been an apology, and then the world went black. She did not feel herself hit the floor. She did not hear the gasps of the other customers or Mrs. Henderson's sharp cry for someone to fetch the doctor. She was aware only of darkness and a strange floating sensation, as if she had finally given up the fight to stay upright and conscious that she had been waging for the past 2 days. When rough but gentle hands lifted her from the floor, she could not open her eyes to see who held her. She felt the solid warmth of a broad chest, the scratch of wool against her cheek, and the steady rhythm of someone's heartbeat beneath her ear. The person carrying her smelled of pine and wood smoke and something wild, like the mountains themselves. "This girl needs food, not a doctor," a deep voice rumbled above her head. "She is starving." "Well, someone should notify the sheriff," Mrs. Henderson was saying. "We cannot have vagrants collapsing in decent establishments. I will take care of her." The voice was firm, brooking no argument. "Send word to Doc Harrison if it makes you feel better, but I am not leaving her here to be gossiped over while she suffers." Helena tried to speak, to explain that she was not a vagrant, that she had simply fallen on hard times, but her lips would not obey her. She felt herself being carried out into the bright November sunshine, heard the sounds of the street, horses and wagon wheels and distant conversations, all fading as consciousness slipped further away. The man carrying her walked with long, steady strides that barely jostled her. She caught fragments of awareness, the sun on her face, the sound of a horse nickering, the creak of leather as she was lifted onto a saddle. Then strong arms surrounded her again, holding her securely against that solid chest as the horse began to move. She drifted in and out of darkness as they traveled. Sometimes she was aware of the horse's gait changing from a walk to a trot, of the town sounds fading behind them. Other times she knew nothing at all. Once, she felt water at her lips and managed to swallow a few sips before slipping away again. When true consciousness finally returned, it came slowly, like dawn breaking over the desert. She became aware first of softness beneath her, then of warmth, then of the crackling sound of a fire. Her eyelids felt heavy, but she forced them open. She was lying on a bed, a real bed with a quilted blanket pulled up to her chin. The cabin around her was small but sturdy, built of solid logs with a stone fireplace where flames danced cheerfully. The afternoon light streamed through a single window, illuminating rough-hewn furniture that nevertheless looked well-made and cared for. Herbs hung drying from the rafters, and she could smell something cooking that made her stomach twist with desperate hunger. "You are awake." The deep voice came from near the fireplace, and Helena turned her head to see the man who had carried her. He was tall. She could tell that, even with him crouching by the fire, and built like someone who spent his days doing hard physical labor. His hair was dark and slightly too long, brushing his collar, and a thick beard covered the lower half of his face. But his eyes, when they met hers, were a startling shade of blue-green like a mountain lake, and they held genuine concern. "I am sorry," Helena managed, her voice coming out as barely a whisper. "I did not mean to cause trouble. The only trouble is that you have not been eating." He stood, revealing his full height, easily over 6 feet, and moved to the small stove where a pot was simmering. "When did you last have a proper meal?" Helena tried to remember. 4 days, maybe 5, his jaw tightened, visible even beneath the beard. "You are lucky you did not do permanent damage." He ladled something into a bowl and brought it to her, along with a cup of water. "This is broth. You need to drink it slowly, or you will make yourself sick. After you keep this down, you can have something more substantial." She tried to sit up, and he quickly set the bowl aside to help her, propping pillows behind her back with a gentleness that seemed at odds with his rough appearance. When she was settled, he handed her the bowl. The broth was chicken, rich and salty, and the most delicious thing she had ever tasted. She wanted to gulp it down, but his warning made her take small, careful sips. He watched her for a moment, then seemed satisfied and returned to the fireplace, giving her space. "My name is Victor Vaughn," he said, tending to the fire. "I have a small ranch about 5 miles up the mountain from Nogales. I was in town for supplies when you fell." "Helena Anderson," she replied between sips. "Thank you for helping me. I will leave as soon as I am able." He turned to look at her, his expression unreadable. "And go where?" The question hung in the air. Helena looked down at the broth in her hands. "I will find work somewhere. I can clean or cook or mend clothes." "Why were you starving in the first place?" She hesitated, unsure how much to reveal to this stranger who had shown her such unexpected kindness. But something in his eyes made her feel that he would understand, that he would not judge. "My parents died of fever 2 years ago," she began quietly. "I went to live with my uncle and his family on their ranch outside of Tucson. At first it was fine, but then my uncle started drinking heavily. He became mean, especially to me. He said I was a burden, eating his food and taking up space without contributing enough. He would withhold meals if he thought I had not worked hard enough. 3 weeks ago, he told me I had to marry his business partner, a man named Samuel Garrett who is nearly 60 years old, or he would turn me out with nothing." Victor's hand stilled on the poker he had been using to adjust the logs. "So you ran." "I took what little I had saved and left in the middle of the night. I thought I could make it to Nogales, find work, start over. But the money ran out faster than I expected, and jobs for unmarried women without references are hard to come by." She took another sip of broth. "I was going to ask at the general store if they needed help, but I suppose I did not make a very good impression." "Mrs. Henderson is a hard woman," Victor said, his voice neutral. "She would not have hired you regardless." They fell into silence, broken only by the crackling of the fire and the soft sounds of Helena drinking her broth. She finished it and felt immediately better, though still weak. Victor brought her a piece of bread, torn from a fresh loaf, and she ate it slowly, savoring every bite. "You can stay here while you recover your strength," he said, not looking at her as he spoke. "It would not be right to send you back to town in your condition." "I cannot impose on you," Helena protested. though the thought of leaving this warm cabin and returning to her desperate situation made her want to cry. "You do not know me. I could be anyone." "You are someone who needs help," he replied simply. "I have a spare room. You can sleep there, eat regular meals, and when you are strong enough, we will figure out what comes next." The kindness in his offer threatened to undo her completely. Helena felt tears burning in her eyes and blinked them back furiously. "Why would you do this for a stranger?" Victor was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire. When he spoke, his voice was low. "I was not always a mountain man living alone. I had a wife once, Emily. She died 3 years ago along with our baby daughter during childbirth. Before that happened, we used to talk about the kind of people we wanted to be, the kind of difference we wanted to make in the world. Emily always said that how we treat strangers when they are vulnerable says everything about our character." He looked at Helena then, and she saw old grief in his eyes. "I like to think that if she were here, she would have brought you home herself." Helena's throat tightened. "I am so sorry for your loss," he nodded, accepting her sympathy. "It was a long time ago. I have made my peace with it, mostly. But I still try to live in a way that would make her proud." They talked more as the afternoon faded into evening. Victor made her another cup of broth and eventually a small serving of stew with potatoes and carrots and tender pieces of beef. She ate slowly, as instructed, and felt her strength gradually returning. He told her about his ranch, how he kept a small herd of cattle and some chickens, how he trapped and hunted to supplement his income, and how he preferred the solitude of the mountains to the noise of town. "Do you not get lonely?" Helena asked. He considered the question. "Sometimes, but I have found that being alone is different from being lonely. After Emily died, I could not stand to be around people. Everyone wanted to comfort me or tell me it would get better, and I just wanted to grieve in peace. So I came up here, built this cabin, and learned to live with my own company. It has been good for me, I think. But you must go to town for supplies," she said. "Once a month, usually. I get what I need and leave as quickly as possible." A hint of humor touched his voice. Today was supposed to be one of those quick trips. Helena felt guilt wash over her. "I have disrupted your entire day. Some disruptions are worth it." He stood and stretched, his head nearly brushing the low ceiling. "You should rest now. You have been through an ordeal and your body needs time to recover. The spare room is through that door. I put fresh linens on the bed this morning as it happens, so you will be comfortable." She wanted to protest that she should help clean up, that she should earn her keep somehow, but exhaustion was pulling at her like a heavy blanket. Victor helped her to her feet, and she swayed slightly, steadying herself against his arm. He was solid as an oak tree, and she felt the strength in him, the capability. The spare room was small but cozy, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a small trunk. A rag rug covered the rough wooden floor, and a painting of mountains hung on the wall. Helena sank onto the bed, and Victor brought her a clean nightgown that must have belonged to his late wife, though he did not say so. "Sleep as long as you need," he told her. "I will be here if you need anything." She wanted to thank him again, to find words adequate to express her gratitude, but he had already stepped out and closed the door softly behind him. Helena changed into the nightgown, which smelled of cedar and lavender from storage, and crawled under the blankets. She expected to lie awake, anxious about her uncertain future, but instead she fell asleep almost immediately, her body surrendering to the safety and warmth of the cabin. She woke once in the night, disoriented, and heard Victor moving quietly in the main room. The sounds were domestic and soothing, the clank of a pot being set aside, the soft thud of a log being added to the fire. She drifted back to sleep, feeling safer than she had in months. Morning came with pale sunlight streaming through the small window. Helena woke feeling more rested than she had in weeks, though her body still ached with the weakness of malnutrition. She dressed in her own worn clothes, wishing she had something cleaner to wear, and ventured out into the main room. Victor was already awake, dressed in canvas pants and a flannel shirt, stirring something at the stove. He looked up when she emerged and nodded. "Good morning. How are you feeling?" "Much better, thank you." It was true. Though still weak, she felt human again, capable of thought beyond her next meal. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the rough wooden table. "Breakfast is almost ready." She sat and watched as he served up plates of scrambled eggs, fried potatoes, and thick slices of bread with butter. Her stomach growled audibly, and he smiled slightly as he set a plate before her. "Eat slowly," he reminded her. They ate in companionable silence. The food was simple but well prepared, and Helena found herself wondering who had taught him to cook. His wife, perhaps, before her death. The thought made her look around the cabin with new eyes, noticing the touches that suggested a woman's influence. The curtains at the window, faded but clean, the herbs hanging from the rafters, the care with which everything was arranged. "Did you build this cabin yourself?" she asked. "Most of it. I had help with the roof and the stone fireplace, but the rest I did on my own. It took me 6 months, working through one winter." He took a sip of coffee. "I wanted something that would last, something solid. The mountains can be harsh, especially when the snow comes." "It is a beautiful home," Helena said honestly. "I can tell you care for it." He looked pleased by the compliment. After breakfast, he insisted she rest more while he attended to his morning chores. She wanted to argue to help somehow, but he was firm. "You need at least 3 days of regular meals before you should exert yourself," he said. "Doctor's orders." "You are not a doctor," she pointed out. "No, but I have common sense, which is sometimes more valuable." He left her with a basket of mending and a book of poetry he said had belonged to his mother. Helena spent the morning sitting by the window, alternately reading and watching him work outside. He moved with the efficient grace of someone completely comfortable with physical labor, splitting wood and hauling water, and tending to the animals with steady competence. By midday, he came back inside and made them a simple lunch of bread and cheese and apples. They ate together, and Helena found herself telling him more about her life. Her happy childhood before her parents died, her father who had been a schoolteacher and had taught her to read and write and calculate figures, her mother who had kept a small garden and knew which plants could heal and which could harm. "You are educated then," Victor observed. "More than most women, I suppose. My father believed girls should learn just as boys do. He said knowledge was the one thing no one could take from you." Her voice caught slightly. "I miss him. I miss both of them." "Of course you do. That kind of loss never fully goes away. You just learn to carry it differently." His understanding touched her. They talked more as the days passed, falling into an easy rhythm. Victor was quiet by nature, but when he spoke, his words had weight. He had been raised in Colorado, the youngest of 5 brothers, and had come to Arizona territory seeking opportunity. He had worked as a ranch hand, then a cattle buyer, before meeting Emily at a church social in Tucson. "She was the minister's daughter," he said, a soft look in his eyes. "Pretty and kind and funny. She made me want to be a better man. We married within 6 months and had 2 good years together before she got pregnant. She was so happy about the baby, planning everything, making little clothes. When she went into labor, it seemed normal at first, but then something went wrong. The baby was turned the wrong way, and neither the midwife nor the doctor could save them." Helena reached across the table and squeezed his hand. He looked surprised but did not pull away. "I truly am sorry, Victor. No one should have to endure such pain." "No," he agreed quietly, But we endure it anyway because what choice do we have? We go on because giving up would dishonor their memory. She understood that. She had felt the same way after her parents died, the sense that she had to keep living, keep trying, because they would have wanted her to. 3 days became 4, then 5. Helena grew stronger, the hollows in her cheeks filling out, the color returning to her complexion. She insisted on helping with the household tasks, and Victor finally relented. She proved to be an excellent cook, better than him, he admitted, and she brought an order to the cabin that had been missing. She organized the shelves, cleaned the windows until they sparkled, and started a sourdough starter that filled the cabin with the yeasty smell of rising bread. "You are transforming my home," Victor said one evening, looking around at the changes with something like wonder. "I hope you do not mind," Helena said anxiously. "I just wanted to help to earn my keep." "Mind? Helena, this place has not felt like a home since Emily died. You have brought life back into it." The words hung between them, charged with meaning neither was quite ready to examine. Helena busied herself with washing the dishes, and Victor retreated to the fireplace, but both were acutely aware of the other's presence in a way that went beyond simple companionship. It was on the 6th day that Victor asked her what she planned to do next. They were sitting at the table after supper, the remains of a venison stew between them, and his question made her stomach clench with anxiety. "I suppose I should return to Nogales and look for work again," she said, though the thought filled her with dread. "You have been more than generous, but I cannot stay here indefinitely." "Why not?" She looked at him in surprise. "What?" Victor leaned back in his chair, his expression serious. "Why can you not stay?" "I have plenty of room, more food than one person needs, and you have already proven yourself useful. The cabin is cleaner than it has been in years, you cook better than I do, and you are good company besides. I could use help with the ranch, especially with winter coming. There are things a woman can do that make life easier, preserving food, mending clothes, managing the household. In return, you would have shelter, food, and safety." Helena's heart was beating fast. "Are you offering me employment? Of sorts, yes. I cannot pay you in coin, I do not have much of that. But I can offer you a home and protection and a partnership of sorts. You would not be a servant, Helena. You would be more like a partner in running this homestead." It was an extraordinary offer, one that solved all her immediate problems. But there was one significant issue. "People would talk," she said quietly. "An unmarried woman living with an unmarried man, my reputation would be ruined. We are 5 miles from town and I only go down once a month. Who would know? Someone would find out. They always do." Victor was quiet, his jaw working as if he were chewing over a difficult problem. Finally, he said, "Then we could marry." Helena stared at him. "What?" He held up a hand. "Hear me out. It would be a practical arrangement, a marriage of convenience. You need protection and security. I need help with the ranch, and if I am honest, I am tired of being alone. We get along well, we respect each other. That is more than many marriages have." "But you do not love me," Helena said, her voice barely above a whisper. "No," he agreed, and the honesty stung even though she had spoken the truth herself. "But I care about your well-being, and I believe we could build something good together. Love is not the only foundation for a marriage. Sometimes partnership and mutual respect are enough." Helena's mind was reeling. A week ago she had been starving in the street. Now she was being offered both employment and marriage by a man who was essentially a stranger, albeit a kind one. It was mad. It was impractical. It was also the best offer she was likely to receive. "Could I think about it?" she asked. "Of course. Take all the time you need." But Helena already knew what her answer would be. She had no other options, no other prospects. More than that, though, she genuinely liked Victor. He was good and honorable and treated her with respect. In the 6 days she had known him, he had been nothing but kind. Could she do worse than marrying such a man? That night, lying in the narrow bed in the spare room, she thought about her parents. Her father had married her mother for love, and they had been happy together. Would they want her to settle for less? But then, what was love anyway? Was it not built on the very things she and Victor already shared: respect, kindness, companionship? Perhaps love could grow from that foundation. In the morning, she told him yes. Victor received her answer with a solemn nod, as if she had agreed to a business proposition rather than a marriage. "I will do my best to be a good husband to you," he said. "I cannot promise you passion or romance, but I can promise you loyalty and respect." "That is enough," Helena said, and meant it. They were married 3 days later by the circuit preacher who happened to be passing through Nogales. It was a simple ceremony with Mrs. Henderson and her husband serving as unwilling witnesses, summoned because the law required it. Mrs. Henderson looked scandalized by the speed of the courtship, but Helena did not care. She wore a simple blue dress that Victor had purchased for her, and he wore his cleanest shirt and looked uncomfortable in it. When the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Victor kissed her chastely on the forehead, and they walked out of the church into the bright November sunshine as a married couple. The ride back to the cabin was quiet. Helena felt strange, like she was watching her life happen to someone else. She was married now, Mrs. Helena Vaughn, wife to a mountain man she had known for less than 2 weeks. It should have felt wrong, but somehow it felt right, like a door closing on one life and opening on another. That night, Victor made up a bed for himself on the floor by the fireplace. "I do not expect anything from you," he said, not quite meeting her eyes. "The marriage is legal and binding, but we can take our time with the rest. You are safe here, Helena. Always." She went to bed alone, grateful for his consideration but also feeling oddly disappointed. It was not that she wanted to consummate the marriage exactly. She barely knew him. But the reality of their arrangement felt suddenly stark. They were married in name only, two lonely people sharing a cabin and a legal bond, but nothing more. The days that followed were strange. They were married, but they lived more like siblings or business partners. They worked together during the day, Victor teaching her about the ranch and the animals, Helena managing the household and helping with the endless tasks that came with preparing for winter. They ate meals together and talked about practical things. What needed to be done, what supplies they would need, how severe the winter might be. But at night, they retreated to separate beds, and there was a careful politeness between them that felt increasingly artificial. It was Helena who finally broke the stalemate. 2 weeks after their wedding, she was in the barn helping Victor muck out the stalls when he slipped on some wet hay and caught himself against the wall, swearing softly. "Are you hurt?" she asked, concerned. "Just my pride," he muttered, straightening up. "I am usually more sure-footed than that. You are human, Victor. You are allowed to stumble." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something shifted in his expression. "I feel like that is what I have been doing since the day I met you. Stumbling around, unsure of my footing." Helena set down her rake. "What do you mean, this marriage, this arrangement? I thought I could handle it, thought I could keep things simple and practical. But you are in my home, in my life, and I find myself thinking about you constantly. Wondering if you are happy, if you are comfortable, if you regret agreeing to this." Her heart was beating fast. "I do not regret it. No, no. These past weeks have been among the happiest I can remember in a long time. I wake up every morning grateful to be here, to be safe, to be with you." He took a step toward her. "With me specifically, or just safe in general?" It was a fair question, and it deserved an honest answer. Helena thought about the way her stomach fluttered when Victor smiled, the way she looked forward to their evening conversations, The way she had started noticing small details about him. The way his eyes crinkled when he was amused, the gentleness of his hands when he handled the animals, the sound of his voice in the morning when he was still heavy with sleep. "With you specifically," she said quietly. "I care about you, Victor, more than I expected to." He closed the remaining distance between them, stopping just inches away. "I care about you too, more than is probably wise given the circumstances." "Why is it not wise?" "Because this was supposed to be practical, convenient. But you have disrupted everything, Helena Vaughn. You have made me feel things I thought I would never feel again." "What things?" she whispered. Instead of answering, he cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. It was not a chaste kiss like the one at their wedding. It was deep and searching, full of weeks of restrained longing. Helena kissed him back with equal fervor, her hands clutching at his shirt, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Victor rested his forehead against hers. "I am falling in love with you," he said. "I did not plan to, did not want to risk my heart again, but I cannot seem to help myself." Tears sprang to Helena's eyes. "I am falling in love with you too. I think I have been since the day you carried me out of that store." He kissed her again, softer this time, tender. "I want this to be a real marriage, Helena, in every way, but only if you want that too." "I want that," she said. "I want you." They left the barn unfinished and went back to the cabin hand in hand. That night, Victor did not make up a bed by the fireplace. Instead, they shared the larger bed, and he made love to her with a gentleness that made her cry with its sweetness. He was patient and careful, aware that she was new to this, and when it was over, he held her close and told her she was beautiful. "I never thought I would have this again," he murmured into her hair. "I thought that part of my life was over." "We both get a second chance," Helena said, tracing patterns on his chest. "We get to be happy again." And they were happy. As November gave way to December and the first snows began to fall in the mountains, their marriage transformed from a convenient arrangement into something real and deep. They learned each other's rhythms and preferences, discovered shared humor and complementary strengths. Victor taught Helena to shoot so she could help defend the property from predators, and she taught him the recipes her mother had used, filling the cabin with the smells of her childhood. On Christmas morning, Victor gave her a carved wooden box he had made in secret, and Helena gave him a thick knitted scarf in dark blue. They exchanged their modest gifts and felt like the richest people in the territory. The winter was harsh, as Victor had predicted, with heavy snows that sometimes kept them inside for days at a time. But Helena did not mind. She loved the enforced intimacy, the long evenings by the fire with Victor reading aloud from his small collection of books while she sewed or knitted. They talked for hours about everything and nothing, their childhoods, their dreams, their fears, their hopes for the future. "I want children someday," Helena confessed one night, "but I know that must be hard for you to think about after what happened." Victor was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire. "It is hard," he admitted. "I still have nightmares sometimes about losing Emily and the baby, but I also think about what Emily would want, and I know she would not want me to let fear keep me from living fully. If we are blessed with children, I will be grateful and terrified, but mostly grateful." "We do not have to rush into anything," Helena said. "We are not rushing, we are living." He pulled her closer. "Whatever happens, we will face it together." In February, Helena realized her monthly courses were late. She waited another week, afraid to hope, before telling Victor. His face went pale and she saw the fear flicker in his eyes before he mastered it. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Not completely, but I think so." He pulled her into his arms and held her tightly. She felt him trembling slightly and realized he was crying silently, his face buried in her hair. "I am terrified," he whispered. But I am also so happy I can barely breathe. Is that normal? I think so, she said, her own tears flowing freely. I am scared too, but we will take care of each other, and whatever happens, we will face it together. They rode down to Nogales the next week, despite the snow, so Doc Harrison could confirm what they already knew. The doctor, a kind older man with gentle hands, examined Helena and declared her about 2 months along, likely due in late August or early September. You are healthy and strong, he told her. I see no reason why you should not have an easy pregnancy and delivery. But I want you to come see me once a month so I can keep an eye on things. Victor arranged for them to stay in town one night a month so Helena could have her checkups. They always stayed at the small boarding house run by Mrs. Fletcher, a widow who was much kinder than Mrs. Henderson. Word got around Nogales that Victor Vaughn had married and that his wife was expecting, and the town's opinion of him softened. People started greeting them on the street, and Mrs. Henderson even made a point of congratulating Helena, though her smile did not quite reach her eyes. As Helena's belly grew, Victor became increasingly protective. He insisted on doing all the heavy work around the ranch, would not let her climb ladders or carry anything heavier than a basket of eggs. It was endearing and occasionally frustrating, especially when Helena felt perfectly capable. I am pregnant, not an invalid, she told him one day in May when he tried to stop her from weeding the garden. I know, but humor me. I lost one wife and child. I cannot lose another. The raw pain in his voice made her relent. She understood his fear, even if she did not share it to the same degree. Every night, he placed his hand on her swelling belly and marveled at the kicks and movements he felt there. It is a strong baby, he said one evening in July, his hand spread across her stomach. Can you feel how hard those kicks are? Trust me, I feel them, Helena said dryly. Especially when I am trying to sleep. He laughed and kissed her belly. Settle down in there, little one. Your mother needs her rest. As if in response, the baby kicked directly against his palm, and Victor's face lit up with such joy that Helena felt her eyes fill with tears. This rough mountain man who had saved her life had become the center of her world, and she could not imagine her life without him. Labor started on a hot August afternoon when Helena was hanging laundry. She felt the first pain and straightened up, recognizing it for what it was. Victor was in the barn, and she walked there slowly, breathing through the contractions that were still far apart. It is time, she said simply when she found him. The color drained from his face. Now, are you sure? Babies come when they are ready, Victor. We need to get to town to the doctor. He moved into action, hitching up the wagon with shaking hands, making sure Helena was comfortable with blankets and pillows. The ride down the mountain seemed to take forever, every bump and jolt making Helena wince. Victor drove as carefully as he could while still maintaining speed, his face tight with worry. They made it to Doc Harrison's office by early evening. The doctor took one look at Helena and ushered her into the back room, where he kept a bed for patients who needed overnight care. Victor tried to follow, but the doctor stopped him. You wait out here, Doc Harrison said firmly. I will take care of your wife. I want him with me, Helena said, her voice strained. Please, I need him. The doctor hesitated, then nodded. All right. But stay out of my way and do not faint on me. Victor promised, and he stayed by Helena's side through the long night that followed. Labor was hard, painful work, and there were moments when Helena thought she could not go on. But Victor was there, holding her hand, wiping her face with a cool cloth, murmuring encouragement even though his own face was gray with fear and exhaustion. You are doing so well, he told her. You are the strongest person I know. I do not feel strong, she gasped between contractions. You are a warrior, Just a little longer now. As dawn was breaking, their son finally arrived with a lusty cry that filled the room. Doc Harrison cleaned him quickly and placed him in Helena's arms, and she looked down at the squalling, red-faced infant with a surge of love so powerful it took her breath away. "He is perfect," she whispered. Victor was crying openly, unashamed of his tears as he gazed at his son. "He is beautiful. You are beautiful. Thank you, Helena. Thank you." The doctor finished his work, declared both mother and baby healthy, and left them alone for a few minutes. Victor sat on the edge of the bed, one arm around Helena and one finger gently grasped in his son's tiny fist. "What should we name him?" Helena asked. "I was thinking about my father's name, Henry, if you like it." "Henry Vaughn," Helena said, testing it out. "I like it. It is a good, strong name." "Henry Victor Vaughn," Victor amended, after both his grandfathers. They stayed in town for 3 days, until Doc Harrison was satisfied that Helena was strong enough to travel. The boarding house residents made a fuss over the baby, and even Mrs. Henderson stopped by with a small quilt she had made, her expression slightly less disapproving than usual. The ride back to the cabin was slow and careful, Victor driving as if they were transporting precious cargo, which they were. When they finally arrived home, he insisted on carrying both Helena and the baby inside, unwilling to let either of them exert themselves. The months that followed were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Henry was a good baby, healthy and hungry and growing rapidly. Helena marveled at how naturally motherhood came to her, and watching Victor with their son filled her heart to bursting. He was gentle and patient, singing old songs his own father had taught him, walking the floor in the middle of the night when Henry fussed. "I was so afraid I would not be able to do this," he confessed one night, holding his sleeping son. "After what happened with Emily, I thought I would be too scared, but when I hold him, all I feel is love. The fear is there, but it is smaller than I thought it would be." "You are a wonderful father," Helena told him. "Our son is lucky to have you." As Henry grew from an infant to a toddler, the cabin rang with his laughter and the patter of his small feet. He was bold and adventurous like his father, always trying to climb things or explore places he should not go. By the time he was 2, Helena was pregnant again, and this time Victor was calmer, his confidence bolstered by Henry's successful birth. Their daughter arrived in the spring of 1885, a tiny, dark-haired girl they named Hannah after Helena's mother. She was quieter than Henry had been, more content to simply observe the world around her with serious gray eyes. "We have been blessed," Victor said one evening, watching Henry try to make his baby sister laugh while Helena nursed her. "I never thought I would have this. A family, a home, this much happiness. You gave me that, Helena. You gave me everything." "We gave it to each other," she corrected. "I would still be starving in Nogales if not for you, or worse, married to that horrible old man my uncle chose. That was never going to happen. I would have found you somehow, pulled you out of that general store even if you had not fainted. You were meant to be mine, and I was meant to be yours." Helena believed it. Looking back on that desperate day when she had collapsed from hunger, it felt like fate had been at work. Of all the people in that store, it had been Victor who stepped forward to help her. Victor who had carried her to safety. Victor who had offered her not just shelter but a future. The years rolled on, marked by the changing of seasons and the milestones of their children. Henry grew tall and strong, fascinated by the animals and the mountains, always begging his father to take him hunting or fishing. Hannah was quieter but just as determined, teaching herself to read from the books in the cabin and helping her mother with the cooking and gardening. In 1889, when Henry was 6 and Hannah was 4, Helena gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl they named Harold and Hope. The cabin was suddenly cramped and chaotic, filled with the sounds of children playing and arguing and laughing. Victor built an addition onto the cabin, giving the children more space and creating a larger main room for the family to gather. "We are going to need a bigger table," Helena observed, looking at their growing family. "I will build one," Victor promised. "I will build whatever we need." This is a happy problem to have. And it was happy. Exhausting, certainly, but happy. Helena sometimes thought about the frightened, starving young woman she had been and could barely recognize herself. She was strong now, confident, deeply loved and loving in return. She had a partner who respected her, children who brought her joy, and a home that was filled with warmth and laughter. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Victor presented her with a new wedding ring to replace the simple band he had bought in Nogales. This one had a small diamond, modest but beautiful. "I wanted to give you this earlier," he said as he slipped it on her finger. "But between the children and the ranch, money has been tight. I have been saving for 3 years to buy you this." Helena looked at the ring, then at her husband, and felt tears welling up. "It is beautiful. But Victor, you did not have to do this. The original ring meant everything to me. It still does. I know. But I wanted you to have something that showed the world how much I value you. You are not just my wife, Helena. You are my best friend, my partner, the love of my life. I want everyone who sees this ring to know that you are treasured." She kissed him then, deeply and sweetly, and when they broke apart, all 4 children were watching them with expressions ranging from curiosity to exaggerated disgust. "Gross," Henry announced. "Do you have to do that where we can see?" "Yes," Victor said, pulling Helena close. "You should all know how much I love your mother. Maybe someday you will be lucky enough to find someone who makes you this happy." As the 1890s arrived, the children continued to grow. Henry, at 11, was already talking about joining his father in running the ranch full-time. Hannah, at 9, had discovered a talent for drawing and spent hours sketching the mountains and animals around their home. The twins, Harold and Hope, were 5 and into everything, a whirlwind of energy that kept both Helena and Victor on their toes. Life on the mountain was not always easy. There were hard winters when supplies ran low, springs when floods threatened the ranch, summers when drought made them worry about the cattle. But they faced each challenge together, and the struggles only made them stronger as a family. One evening in the spring of 1895, after the children were in bed, Helena and Victor sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and purple. It had been nearly 14 years since that desperate day in Nogales, and Helena felt the weight of everything that had happened since. "Do you ever think about how different our lives could have been?" she asked Victor. "If you had not been in town that day, or if someone else had helped me, or if I had not fainted all the time," he admitted. "I think about how close I came to losing you before I even found you. It terrifies me, honestly. But I also believe some things are meant to be. We were meant to find each other, Helena. Everything that came before, all the pain and loss we both suffered, it led us to that moment in the general store. Do you still miss her? Emily." It was a question Helena had asked before over the years, and Victor's answer was always honest. "I will always carry a piece of her with me. She was my first love, and losing her shaped who I am. But what I feel for you is different. It is not better or worse, just different. You are not a replacement for her, Helena. You are your own person, and I love you completely for who you are. What we have built together, this family, this life, it is ours, and I would not change a single thing about it." Helena leaned her head on his shoulder, content. "Neither would I. Even the hard parts led us here." As their children grew into young adults, Helena and Victor watched with pride as Henry took over more responsibility for the ranch. as Hannah's artwork began to attract attention when they showed it in town, as the twins developed their own distinct personalities and dreams. The cabin that had once housed just Victor's lonely existence now rang with life and love and the chaos of a large family. In 1900, Henry married a sweet young woman from town named Margaret, and they built a small house on the property so Henry could continue working the ranch. Within a year, they had made Victor and Helena grandparents, and holding his grandson in his arms, Victor cried as he had when his own children were born. "I never imagined this," he told Helena that night, "that I would live long enough to see grandchildren, that I would have so much happiness. It does not seem possible that the broken man who carried you out of that store could end up here." "You were never broken," Helena said firmly. "You were grieving, but you were never broken. You were strong enough to open your heart again, to take a chance on a starving stranger." That took courage, Victor. Hannah married 2 years later, choosing a fellow artist she had met at an exhibition in Tucson. They moved to California, where there were more opportunities for their work, and though Helena missed her daughter terribly, she was happy that Hannah had found her path. The twins, now in their late teens, were still figuring out their futures. Harold thought he might want to study law, while Hope was interested in teaching. Both options would require leaving the mountain, and while it pained Helena to think of her children scattered, she knew it was natural and right. She and Victor had given them roots and wings, and now they were learning to fly. As 1905 dawned, Victor was 51 and Helena was 46. They were grandparents 3 times over, with Henry and Margaret having added 2 more children to the family. The ranch was prosperous, their children were happy, and they had built a life together that exceeded anything either had imagined possible. One spring evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset just as they had so many times before, Helena took Victor's hand. "Thank you," she said simply. "For what?" "For everything. For saving my life. For giving me a home. For loving me. For this beautiful life we have built together." Victor lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "I should be thanking you. You brought my life back to me when I thought it was over. You gave me love and family and purpose. Every morning I wake up grateful that you fainted in that general store, as terrible as that sounds." Helena laughed. "It does sound terrible, but I understand what you mean. That was the worst day of my life until it became the best day of my life. Every day with you is the best day," Victor said, "even the hard ones." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the mountains turn purple in the fading light. From inside the house, they could hear their grandchildren playing, Henry's voice telling them to settle down, Margaret laughing at something. It was the sound of family, of continuity, of love multiplying across generations. "We did well," Helena said softly. "We did very well," Victor agreed. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, they remained on the porch, hand in hand. 2 people who had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances and built something beautiful from desperation and hope. The mountain man and the starving woman had become partners, lovers, parents, grandparents. Their lives intertwined so completely that neither could imagine existence without the other. The years ahead would bring more joys and sorrows, as all lives do. There would be more grandchildren, eventually even great-grandchildren. There would be losses too, the inevitable toll of time. But through it all, Victor and Helena would face everything together, just as they had since that fateful day in November 1881. They never forgot how they began, with hunger and fainting and unexpected kindness. It became a story they told their children and grandchildren, a reminder that sometimes our darkest moments lead us to our greatest blessings, that love can grow from practical arrangements. that taking a chance on a stranger can change your entire life. As they finally rose from the porch and went inside to join their family, Victor paused at the door and looked back at the mountains, dark against the star-filled sky. This place had been his refuge after loss, his sanctuary in grief. Helena had transformed it into a home filled with love and laughter and life. He sent up a silent prayer of gratitude to whatever force had brought them together, to the hunger that had driven her to Nogales, to the compassion that had made him step forward when she fell. "Are you coming?" Helena called from inside. "Yes," Victor said, turning toward the warm light of home. "I am right here." And he was. He always would be. They had promised each other loyalty and respect on their wedding day, never dreaming they would find passionate love as well. But they had found it, nurtured it, built a life around it that would echo through generations. The mountain man who had thought his capacity for love had died with his first wife had discovered he could love again, perhaps even more deeply for having known loss. The starving woman who had thought she had nothing left had found she had everything that mattered: home, family, purpose, love. Their story was not the fairy tale Helena had dreamed of as a girl, with princes and castles and grand romantic gestures. It was better than that. It was real. It was hard-won. It was built on mutual respect and daily choices to love and support each other. It was a life crafted from practical necessity that had transformed into something beautiful and enduring. As Victor joined Helena inside the cabin, now expanded and filled with the evidence of their shared life, he caught her hand and pulled her close for a kiss. Their grandchildren giggled, and Henry rolled his eyes good-naturedly, and Margaret smiled at the romance that still sparked between the older couple after 24 years of marriage. "Still acting like newlyweds," Henry teased. "I hope we always do," Victor replied, keeping his arm around Helena's waist. "Your mother is still the most beautiful woman I have ever seen, and I will never take for granted that she is mine." Helena blushed, pleased by his words even after all these years. "And your father is still the kindest, strongest man I know. I am very lucky." "We are all lucky," little Margaret, Henry's eldest daughter, piped up. She was 7 and wise beyond her years. "Grandmother told me the story of how you met, how you saved her life, grandfather." "She saved my life too," Victor said, looking down at Helena with love evident in his weathered face. "In ways I did not even know I needed saving. Sometimes the person who needs rescuing is not the one who fell." The evening passed in warmth and comfort, the family sharing a meal and stories and laughter. When the grandchildren were finally tucked into bed, and Henry and Margaret had retired to their own small house, Victor and Helena prepared for sleep in the room they had shared for so many years. As they settled into bed, Helena rested her head on Victor's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. It was a sound that had comforted her for thousands of nights, a reminder of his strength and constancy. His arm came around her, holding her close, and she felt the familiar sense of safety and belonging that had never diminished over the years. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "I love you too," Victor replied, his voice soft and warm. "Thank you for being brave enough to faint in front of me." Helena laughed quietly. It was not exactly intentional. The best things rarely are. They drifted off to sleep wrapped in each other's arms, secure in the life they had built and the love they shared. Outside, the wind whispered through the pine trees, and the mountains stood eternal and strong, bearing witness to yet another day in the life of a family built on love that had grown from the most unlikely of beginnings. The story that had started with a woman fainting from hunger in a general store had become an epic of love and family that would be told and retold through generations. Victor and Helena Vaughn became the foundation of a family tree that would spread wide across Arizona territory and beyond, their descendants carrying forward the values of kindness, resilience, and love that they embodied. As the dawn broke over the mountains the next morning, painting the peaks in shades of gold and pink, Victor and Helena woke together as they had for countless mornings before. They rose to face another day, surrounded by family and blessed beyond measure, two souls who had found each other in desperation and forged a love story for the ages. The mountain man and the starving woman had become something greater than either could have dreamed. They had become home for each other, partners in building not just a ranch but a legacy. And that legacy was love, pure and simple and enduring, the kind of love that starts with an act of kindness and grows into something that changes the world, one generation at a time. Years later, when both Victor and Helena were gray and their bodies bore the marks of long lives well lived, they would still sit on that porch and watch the sunset together. They would hold hands and remember the journey that had brought them to this place, and they would marvel at how close they had come to missing each other entirely. But fate, or providence, or simple human kindness had intervened, and two lonely people had found in each other everything they needed. Their love story was not the dramatic, turbulent affair of youth. It was the steady, deep love of mature souls who had found partnership and passion in equal measure. It was a love built on mutual respect, shared values, and thousands of small daily choices to care for and support one another. It was a love that weathered storms and celebrated victories, that grew stronger with each passing year rather than fading. And when their time finally came to leave this world, as it comes for everyone eventually, they went peacefully. First Helena at the age of 73, with Victor holding her hand and whispering his love one last time, and then Victor just 6 months later, unable to bear being separated from the woman who had given him back his life. Their children buried them side by side on a hillside overlooking the ranch they had built together, and the headstone reads simply, "Victor and Helena Vaughn, beloved parents and grandparents, together forever." It was a fitting tribute to a love that had conquered loneliness and desperation to create something beautiful and lasting. But that end was still far in the future as Victor and Helena began their new day in 1905, surrounded by family and purpose and love. They had decades yet to live, grandchildren yet to meet, moments yet to share. They had the rest of their lives to continue the journey they had started in a general store in Nogales, when a starving woman fainted and a grieving mountain man chose kindness over indifference. That choice had made all the difference. That single act of compassion had rippled outward through time, creating a family, a legacy, a love story that proved that sometimes our greatest blessings come disguised as our darkest moments. Helena's hunger had led her to Victor. Victor's loneliness had been healed by Helena. And together, they had built something that would last long after they were gone, a testament to the transformative power of love, the importance of kindness, and the truth that it is never too late for a second chance at happiness. As the sun rose fully over the mountains that spring morning, casting its light on the Vaughn Ranch and the family gathered there, it illuminated not just a place, but a promise fulfilled. The promise that love, real and true and hard-won, can heal even the deepest wounds and create beauty from ashes. The promise that sometimes the people who save us are the ones we end up saving in return. The promise that home is not a place but a person, and family is what we build with the ones we love. Victor and Helena Vaughn had learned those truths the hard way, through hunger and grief and desperate circumstances. But they had learned them together, and in doing so, they had created something precious and enduring. Their story was one of transformation, of hunger becoming fulfillment, of loneliness becoming companionship, of practicality becoming passion, of strangers becoming soulmates. It was, in the end, exactly the kind of love story the Wild West needed. Real, gritty, hard-won, and absolutely worth every moment of the struggle it took to achieve it.